Welcome, everybody. It's January the 17th, 2025. Sorry about my voice. I caught something apparently, and it's just killed my voice. We're coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And don't worry about it, because really Mike is going to be talking a ton. And we're also going to be joined by Danny Cupples. I think you probably remember Danny. Danny is Danny is a paramedic from Tennessee. He's involved in the light bulbs that are the 911 locating light bulbs, and he's going to talk about that briefly. We gave a couple of these away back probably a few months back, and these are huge. These are really handy. They're working on projects to get them into like motor homes and houses and brand new codes and stuff like that, so that's pretty exciting. And we've got Mike Elam back tonight. And I'm really excited about having Mike here. We're going to deep dive. This is like part 2. Yeah, me too. Thanks, Teresa. I hope I feel better as well. I'm not really sick. It's just that I can't talk. I was speaking last night at a city council meeting up in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. The chief, Kevin Eichelberry, he invited me to show up to talk about some success stories with respect to the Flock camera system. And I think I'm going to end up having a rep from Flock join us here in a future week, because I think a lot of people just are really scared about cameras, watching them, etc. But it's really not that big of a deal, and it's actually a game changer for law enforcement. A few announcements. I did a remote training with Clovis Police Department. I'm sporting a shirt from them. Thank you to Meredith Alexander, Corporal Meredith Alexander. She's on their negotiating team, and so I appreciate that. And we had an absolutely flawless 2 hours, 2.5 hours actually, of good training where I was talking to them about a lot of different things, crisis negotiating wise. Also, I want to mention my speaking engagement that's coming up in Fort Smith, Arkansas. I told you to get your tickets quick. They had that set at 250 tickets, and that's all that they had. And then I told them, I said, hey, I'm getting inundated with more requests. So they went ahead and rented 50 more chairs. So there's actually capacity for 300 people. And they may have sold out by now. I didn't get an official word that they may have sold out. But if you were interested in going to the United States Marshals Museum, we'd love to have you. Reach out to them on their website, the U.S. Marshals Museum in Fort Smith. Give it a look and see if you can still buy tickets if you're interested in going. It's going to be January the 31st. It's going to be 2 hours. Actually, there's going to be an hour meet and greet with me. Then it'll be 2 hours after that. And of course, I'll hang out as long as they'll let me, and I'll sign whatever. It'll be a fun time. Great time tonight. Mike Elam. Go ahead and bring Mike and Danny Cupples in. We'll just bring them in. I've already given bios on the both of them. I'll just mention this, Mike. Mike, I got a lot of people that reached out to me in reference to your book, and also, believe it or not, I'm going to get you in touch with somebody that is from back in the early 70s. Actually, he was a cop here in Tulsa. He was our police chief. And they know a lot of stuff. And a friend of his by the name of Alan Lansdowne. Alan Lansdowne worked a lot back in those days. And when they heard that you were coming on tonight, I sent them the link to our previous episode. When they heard you were coming on tonight, they were like, holy cow, we've got a lot of information about that. I don't know if it's going to be related to you, but it's about the Oklahoma connection. And they started talking on a level that I just don't know about. So I told them that I would send them your number, or I'll send you their number. And he would love to talk to you. He's a wealth of knowledge. So Mike is here with us. And then Danny is also here. I'm kind of talking a lot, and I said I wasn't going to do it. But I do want to mention Danny. And Danny wanted me to mention that, first of all, he's happy to be here. And the thing that I didn't mention about Danny is he's actually part of the family of the people that were vilified, really, the Hathcocks. And he's a paramedic in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee. And in addition to that, something that I felt he wanted to kind of let me know, and I wanted to pass it along to everybody. I wanted to let everybody know that he's actually part of a cold case team not to get too specific, but how cool is that? So welcome, Danny, and he's going to be kind of a co-host here because he knows the right questions to ask, and I appreciate that, Danny. Mike, tell us about this ambush. I know it happened in 1967, and let's get into that and really deep dive into that. You thought that this would be a valuable episode, and Danny, jump in wherever you want to put a question in there, please.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that wonder about the ambush and the fact that so many strange things happened in that August period. He is said to have told Buford is said to have told one of his many girlfriends that he wanted to have a long-term relationship with her. And when she asked, well, what about Pauline? You're married. He allegedly said that, well, she won't be a problem much longer. Of course, I don't know if this girlfriend thought that meant divorce or what, but just a short time later, of course, Pauline was killed in an ambush supposedly meant for Buford. At the same time, you had an event where a couple of ladies who were at the Old Hickory Grill, just north of the state line, overheard Buford and Pauline in an argument out in the parking lot, in which she threatened to expose his corruption, and he responded by saying something on the order of, if you do that, you won't live to see the light of day. And then, of course, you had others that were involved, had their own little piece of the story. One lady hearing a gunshot come from the Pusser residence, two boys that saw a gun exchange just hours before the ambush took place, the county coroner getting a call from Buford's dad. It was, when you tie all this in together, it really tells a really strange tale.
Yeah, and you said, now, the two boys that you're talking about, one of them is another Hathcock, a relative of you, Danny, but you don't know him really well. Is that right?
Well, actually, I got to talk to him for about 2 hours yesterday, and it was such a great talk, and we are so close related that even closer than I thought. My mother's a Hathcock. My grandmother's a Hathcock that was actually murdered in one of those bars back in the 60s. And the more we talk, the closer we become. So I did realize that I am related to him more than I ever knew. But it was a really, really good talk. It was great hearing some of the stories that he had as well.
That's awesome. So in a small way, we kind of brought you guys together.
Yeah,
between Mike and I.
Yeah, you did.
That's nice. I want to meet him one day down the line too. He sounds like he's got an interesting story. So, Mike, with respect to that, did you say that they saw the weapons getting put into the car or the exchange of weapons?
Well, they had been following Buford as a form of entertainment. It was Selmer. It was the mid 60s. We didn't have video games back in those days. And so their form of entertainment with a number of the boys over there in that area was to follow Buford around. Well, Johnny Harrison and Dennis Hathcock were doing that very night. They knew where Buford often met girlfriends in Eastview. So they managed to get to this particular location. It was a state highway department maintenance lot. And they hid their motorcycle. They crawled up on a pile of chert and waited for Buford to get there. And sure enough, he pulled in. His girlfriend pulled in just a few minutes later. And they had words with Buford telling her that she absolutely had to leave. Well, she pulls out. Buford follows her for just a moment, turns right around, comes back, parks in the same spot. And Dennis and Johnny sat there and watched as another car came into the lot. It was a Chevy Biscayne, had Oklahoma tags. And like a couple of young detectives, they wrote the tag number down. They saw two people in the Biscayne. Only the driver got out. He popped his trunk, as did Buford. And then they took guns from the Biscayne and put them into Buford's car in the trunk. And then they left. And so that's how that part got started.
Anything about the guns?
Ambush, Mike? That was after the ambush?
No, this was prior to the ambush. This happened somewhere right around midnight in that particular time frame. And it was 4 hours later, approximately, that Pauline was killed. The thing that happened after that is that, of course, they followed him when he left that lot. They followed him. I'll just refer to her. Well, her name was Barbara Cox. She was allegedly in an affair with P.D. Plunk. Buford would be going there because that was right close to his girlfriend's house. So he gets there, and they managed to get up on a hillside. It's actually, I guess, a cemetery right across the highway. And they watched as Buford went around banging on windows, banging on doors, wanting to get in. And finally, the girlfriend came running out. She lived just a short distance away. And they had kind of a foot race, fell down on the ground. He grabbed a hold of her, but he wasn't able to hang on to her, which Dennis said it seemed like that Buford was high on something. And she had an entrance. She lived with her parents, and she had a entrance, outside entrance to her room. And she got in there, locked the door, and then Buford went down to a service station downtown. They followed him down there. He got on the phone while Shorty McDaniels was pumping gas. And when he came out, he got in his car, headed toward Adamsville. They thought the night was over, so that's when they quit following him.
Okay. And then some from there. Well, where does the story goes next? Because there's a lot of little neat, well, not neat, but they're interesting points.
Oh, yeah. At some point during this time, of course, Buford went home. At that time, Pauline was allegedly with P.D. Plunk's wife. And she knew that Pauline was going to leave. And they gone out that night just to have one little last hurrah together because they were best friends. And Levon took Pauline to the residence. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that Pauline and Buford had been separated. And Pauline had been spending a lot of time at a motel in Savannah, living there. And in the meantime, just days before, she had called her oldest daughter, Diane, who was living in Memphis, told her that she needed to come home as she and Buford were having problems. And so Diane returned home. And so she was there at the Pusser residence along with Dewana and Mike. And that night, when Pauline arrived at home, she asked Levon to come in. She was just there to get the kids, get some of her personal belongings, I've been told, and said that she refused to go in because she was afraid that Buford might come home. He had told Pauline not to be with Levon, that he didn't like that relationship that they had being so close. And so Levon parked down the street a little ways. Said she hadn't much more than got parked until Buford passed by, pulled in the driveway, went in the house, and she couldn't specify when I interviewed her exactly how long it was, but it said it wasn't long, and she heard a single gunshot. And she didn't know what to do. She knew that, there was no way she could handle Buford if she went there. She couldn't call her husband, Petey, who was a deputy of Buford's. She figured that he would lie and try to keep Buford out of any trouble that he might get into. She knew she couldn't call the sheriff's office because Carl Pusser, Buford's father, was the dispatcher jailer. And so the last thing she could do would be to call him, because that would do absolutely no good. So she went back to her home. She was trying to decide what she could do, who she could call, and said about that time, this is a couple of hours later probably, and said that Petey called her and said, well, Pauline just got killed in an ambushment for Buford. Now, the really puzzling thing about that, I guess, is that in that interim, Carl Pusser had called the county coroner and told him he needed to get over to Buford and Pauline's residence because they were in a fight and about to kill each other. The coroner was Ward Moore. Of course, I interviewed both Levon and Ward about this, and it was one of those situations where Ward said when he got there that Buford and Pauline were no longer there. He looked around the house and said he did see some blood droplets on the carpet in the living room. Said there wasn't much blood at all, just what he described it as droplets. And kind of like if you have a bloodied nose or bloodied lip. At any rate, there wasn't much he could do then, so he left. I don't know whether he called Carl back or not, told him anything. But then, he got a call the next morning very early, and he went out to the ambush sites where a lot of this had happened.
Hey, Mike, right before you go 2 minutes further, it was said that at that time that Diane looked out the window while this was going on and saw, this is from her mouth.
Right.
She saw that Buford was dragging Pauline to the car and placed her in the passenger seat. It was coming back to the house, and Diane got scared and thought Buford was coming for her. She ducked down and looked back up, and he stopped and reached down and picked the shoes up out of the yard, which came off of her feet because he was dragging her, and walked over and sat the shoes at her feet in the car.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah. An associate of mine, he was chief police there in Continental Ohio. He was down at the Pusser restaurant when Diane worked there. And he ran into her one night just by accident. And they got into a conversation about this. And she asked him, says, well, who do you think killed my mom? And Arnie told her, said, well, I believe it was Buford. And she seemed real relieved that somebody else thought that. And she told him the story about Buford. Well, first of all, she said she heard a pop. She didn't elaborate on that, I don't guess, but said that she was afraid of Buford, didn't want to go out of the room that she was in, but she heard the door open. And so she eventually looked out the window and saw Buford half dragging, half carrying Pauline to the car, put her in the front passenger seat, came back and said that she thought that he was coming back to kill her. And said instead he picked up the shoes and put them in the car, and then Diane hid under the bed. So
the credibility, in my opinion, that's credible because that was actually a statement from. So not it's not hearsay. That's what makes it so credible.
Yeah, and our point is all these things tie in together. You think about it. You've got so many different people that within just a matter of a few hours were connected to the same story. You think about it with the two ladies, which were Barbara Bibbins and Shirley Smith, that heard the argument that they were having at the Old Hickory Grill. Then you have Dennis and Johnny that watched the gun exchange in Eastview. Then you have Carl calling Ward Moore. You have LaVon taking Pauline home. Then you have Diane. All of these, it's really kind of odd that you would have so many people who interacted with the same story in such a close proximity of time.
So now the ambush is supposed to have happened at this point, right? Now they left the house.
Yes, which is
about 2 a.m. Is that right, Mike?
kind of odd to me that they took the route that they did, because for people that have been over there, they know what it's like. The Pusser residence was about 2 blocks from Highway 64. And they could have easily got on Highway 64, drove to Selmer, turned south on 45, and they would have been to Hollis Jordan's Tavern, which is where that they were supposed to be responding to a call. That was Buford's story, is that they had received a call that there was a disturbance there, that someone was going to get killed. And it's still kind of a strange thing about why Pauline would have been with him, because as anybody that's been in law enforcement knows, the last thing you want to do is take your spouse on a call, especially a disturbance call, because those can go sideways really quick. But yet, for some reason, she went with him. Now, what is odd is I have a statement from Jim Moffitt, who was Buford's chief deputy, that contradicted what some of Buford's friends in law enforcement were saying, because a lot of them were saying that, Pauline often accompanied him on calls. And Jim said that was not true, that if it was at night, like this was, that Buford always called him and they would go together on calls. Said that there was only 2 different times he could think of that he had not been on such calls with Buford, and both times he was shot. So, I guess everybody's going to have to make up their own mind about that sort of thing. But rather than take Highway 64 and then 45 where that they could really travel, Buford had a lead foot. He really liked to drive fast. And as a result, he was in a number of accidents over the years. But instead of taking, these highways, he went on a convoluted route of county roads, country roads, eventually ended up over on New Hope Road, which is near 45 at the state line. But it was an odd way to go to Hollis Jordan's Beer Tavern.
Yeah.
According to him, what happened then? He said that someone, as he was going down this old country road, someone come up behind him behind the church, and then according to his statement, that they started firing on him in two different spots. I believe that's right.
Yeah, which is another thing I found really odd about all this, in that if you've ever been down through that stretch, back then there was hardly any place that you could hide. And so it was just a theory, nothing more, as I understand it, that the TBI was working with, that the ambush party had to be there at that church. Now, it's only 7/10 of a mile from the New Hope Methodist Church to the first ambush site. And Buford, as I understand it, was going, 5 miles down that stretch. And of course, in the first place, you have to wonder how an ambush party would know to wait for him on this particular route, because it was so, like I say, convoluted. He crossed over 2 highways on the way to New Hope Road. And, either one of them would have got him there to Hollis Jordan's quicker if he had just turned off on either of those highways that he crossed and went over to 45. But instead, he continued on these convoluted roads, which leaves the question, if you were the ambush party, how would you be waiting all on this route? How would you know that Buford was going to take that?
It was dark. It was dark too, wasn't it, Mike? It was like 4 in the morning.
4:45 in the morning is what the TBI established as the time of the ambush. You know, and here in this past year, I went back over there and tried to reconstruct what might have happened at 4:45 in the morning, because he said that this Cadillac chased him down without the use of their headlights, pulled up beside him at that first ambush site, turned on their lights, and fired a couple of shots. And he said one hit Pauline in the head, and that she leaned over on him. Sometimes you'd hear him say that she took his arm, but every time he would say that, well, she was gasping for breath. And so he hit the gas and just tried to leave them behind. And I just found it strange because when I tried it, the road is much more improved than it was back in 1967. It's a little wider. It's blacktop now, where it was just oil and chert, or a type of chat on top of the oil. It had just been maintained the day before. And with this fresh layer of oil and chert. And, you know, there were no markings. There were hardly any road signs on that stretch back in those days. So it's much improved over what it was. Well, when we tried it at 4:45 in the morning without headlights, the best we could do, and that was with using my park lights on the car to illuminate the center line, which is there now, which didn't exist back then. The best I could do is get up to 32 miles an hour on a stretch. And so it doesn't make sense that they could catch up with him and pull up alongside of him and open fire like that.
Now, he was shot in the face, right? In the jaw.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's
What anything you can tell us about that injury?
Well, that happened at the second site. When the second site was 2.1 miles on down the road from that little bridge where the first part of the ambush took place. Now, he got down there, said he thought he had lost them, which is also kind of confusing because they've already pulled up beside you once, turned their headlights on, and fired a couple of rounds into your vehicle, allegedly. So, you know, you have to question, why would they turn their headlights back off? Because you should have been able to look up in the rearview mirror and knew that they were still behind him. Well, he said he got to the second ambush site there at Davis Yancey Road and New Hope Road, that he stopped and said he started to get out of the car so he could check on Pauline. And he made the statement, he said, I saw they were on me again. He had 1 foot out of the car, 1 foot still in the car. He said they pulled up beside him and opened fire. And he got hit in the chin. It wasn't the jaw like the movie showed, where in the movie, it blew his jaw away, all this, and that's what you'd see W.R. Morris and others write about. But actually, he just had a wound to his chin. Now, I do have a photograph of that on my Facebook page, Bufford Pusser, The Other Story, for anyone who wants a little bit of a grisly sight, where you can see that wound. But you can clearly see that his jaw is actually intact.
Well, so that's in the book. Put that book back up there, Amanda. This is a good spot to just mention that. You know what? Buy his book. Look for it. It's on Amazon. We've got a link that we'll throw up there. It's on Amazon, and he also sells them on eBay. And you know what you can do? You could buy one of these light bulbs. You could sit there with one of these light bulbs and read his book. Right, Danny? Have a light bulb and a book and a nice fire. And there you go. A package deal.
There you go.
All right. So this injury, and there's a lot of forensic evidence that's on this car, and I've seen the pictures. There's like blood all over the hood of the car, and stuff like that, which I was trying to figure out my crime scene mind. How in the heck did that blood get out? There's the door. And then you have the I don't know that I got a shot of the hood, but I've seen the hood on your podcast, and which, by the way, you need to check his podcast out. Go to Mike Elam's YouTube page, and he's got a mother load of pictures and stuff on there. But you got some blood spatter that's on the hood of the car, and I can't figure out how that would even be there. Really, did they swab any of this stuff or preserve any of this blood for testing of today kind of testing? Because you should be able to reconstruct a lot of that if they did any kind of documenting with photographs, and
I really can't.
Which I'm doubting that they did.
I really can't say one way or the other whether they did or they didn't. I gave a lot of information to the TBI, but their protocols and such, they don't share any information with you. So I guess what I would like to point out is that Bufford said that he got hit. He fell to the floorboard, which he felt like saved his life, and said then Pauline got shot a second time, which is a kind of an important thing to keep in mind, because Bufford said that he was unconscious or semi-conscious for a while. He laid there in the floorboard. When he finally kind of came to himself, he reached up, grabbed the steering wheel, pulled himself back up into the driver's seat. And he said the ambush party was still sitting there. And so he reached out and grabbed the barrel of the rifle. I believe I've got newspaper clips of his statement about that, both in the book. I've shown it on my YouTube channel. That he grabbed the barrel of that rifle and hung on to it until that they drove away. That they didn't fire any shots while they had a hold of it. Which makes you wonder why an ambush party, would sit there and wait for him to raise himself back up. Why not just get out of the car and shoot him again while he's there on the floorboard? That didn't make any sense to me. Nor did it make any sense that if Pauline was leaning against him, as he said, because he's wore his sidearm where he had to cross draw. So it was on his left side. He said he couldn't get to it because Pauline was leaning into him. But yet somehow when he was shot, he managed to fall over her and end up in the floorboard. That was, for a big man, that was kind of a tight squeeze, I imagine. Yeah. And he said he never got out of the vehicle, nor did Pauline. But yet, it goes back to your question, the blood on the hood, the roof, the bumpers, the outside of the windshield. If he wasn't outside of the car, neither was she. How did all that blood spatter?
Yeah, that's fascinating to me, and that's the thing that I'm interested to know. I'd like to know what kind of things that they did. And the other interesting thing to me, Mike, and you mentioned this to me, is when I'd asked you, I said, hey, do they have any idea where that car is? And what can you tell us about where that car is today?
I have looked for that car for years, and I've had several different stories that I've run across. Some saying that someone in Louisiana bought it, but we can't find it. Another story is that Bufford had it buried over near Crump, just outside of Adamsville, to get rid of it. His story was that he didn't like the memories of it, so he wanted to get rid of the car. But one of the stories is he had it buried. Then another is that he had a friend, Rod Province, who had a garage there in Adamsville. It sat there for quite some time after the ambush, and I've been told that they removed the engine, the transmission, anything of value, and then sent the body to Selmer Salvage, and it was crushed. And back in those days, there was no regulations or laws about salvage companies keeping VIN numbers of the cars that they destroyed or salvaged as such. So we have no idea where the car is.
Yeah. Now, Jason, I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
I've been around law enforcement my whole life. My dad being a police officer down there in that area, and you and I have been through some blood stain pattern analysis courses. Really great one up in New York. One of the things that really strikes my attention, and everything we're talking about is anybody can see in his book or go back to the records and look at it. But on that door where she was, her blood, if you look at that picture, there's a void spot the size of a human head, I would say. And it's almost like, in my opinion, that void spot there is where it's almost like her head was there when she was shot. You know what I'm saying? It looked to me like something was in that area, that void area, when she was hit. And of course, my opinion is maybe she was already laying against it when she was shot. And there's also a picture of her. I don't know if we've seen it on here of her shoes. You can see her shoes where they're neatly placed in front of her feet. Do y'all have that one on there, Jason?
No, I don't think I have that one, but what I can tell you is that what he's talking about, you're talking about the area where the locking mechanism is on the door.
Yeah.
And there's that void there. What he's talking about is the absence of blood in that specific area where her head would have been resting. And you would assume that there would be blood spatter if there's a spatter. Well, there's not any spatter even against the door, but it's just a lot of blood. You had said, Mike, that his story was that she leaned up against him as they're driving down the road, right? And that's those huge bench seats from back when you were kids, those huge bench seats. And it looks to me, I agree with you. I think that she's probably, at least at some point, she's laid up against that door and she's, kind of bleeding there. I'm not saying that she couldn't have been up against him, but at some point, but there's certainly that point where she's over there up against that door for a while and maybe even moving around. What do you think? What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I think there's
the picture. Yeah.
There's the shoes. See how the shoes are just neatly set side by side? And that goes to the story of Diane, what she said, that he walked over and placed those shoes in that floorboard just like that. I mean, she didn't say just like that, but in my mind, that's what I'm thinking is you set them down at her feet. And that kind of matches her story of what she said. But to me, you're right. That void area is something was in that area to keep blood or anything from getting to that spot on that door. That's my opinion. And like you said, could she have been over there on it? Maybe, but whenever that blood happened, and you're right, it's not a spatter. You know how when we study spatter, how when spatter hits an object, it moves. This is almost like it happened when she was there on that door, when she was laying against that door. In my opinion, that's what it looks like to me, and that's something that I'm sure. TBI is a great investigative agency, and I'm sure they're doing, their test on that too. But that's what I would do. I would want to recreate that as well. Mike, didn't you say you had a Hollywood film crew that come in and help you recreate that scene?
No. That was what I had was it wasn't a crew. Back the first time I went over there was in 2005, and I met another researcher from Kentucky over there. And Randy and I, the drive down through there, we looked at everything. Up until that time, I think both of us still wanted to believe that Bufford was a straight up hero. And when we drove from the church down to that first ambush site, it was like neither one of us wanted to be the first one to say it, but it's kind of like we're standing there and we're looking back down the highway or the road toward the direction of the church, and I don't remember which one of us it was said it first, but it was kind of like it didn't happen the way that Bufford said. It just became clear. So we decided to do a reconstruction to see what it would have been like. I was in a car I was purely guessing that at the time Buford was driving about 45 miles an hour because he always drove fast. And that being the kind of road it was, 45 miles an hour would have been a pretty good speed back in those days. And we had a car parked behind the church, a Cadillac. It gave chase as Arnie and I passed by. I was representing Buford's car, and they fell in behind. This was in broad daylight. The guy that was doing the video was a former cameraman from Hollywood, Terry Swindle. And, I got to that bridge. I was probably still about 250 yards ahead of them. And, that just kind of confirmed that there was no way. We did it during broad daylight. There was at one point where that Cadillac, I hate to say this on the air, but it got up to 92 miles an hour trying to catch me and still couldn't do it. But, you think about it, car passes by going 45 and then you're at a dead stop and you give chase. It's going to take you a little distance to catch up.
Yeah.
The mile just wasn't enough on that kind of a windy road down through there.
Well, let me ask this too, because we touched upon it in the last episode a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about this, and basically they just exhumed her body in 2023.
Yes.
And that's going to be in part, I'm going to guess it's going to be in part in some of the stuff that you've uncovered. And there's a picture of the casket. And you had said, or you did, well, I don't know if you'd said it, but from what we understand is that her body was basically virtually perfectly preserved, and they had not done an autopsy on her originally, right?
Correct. That was one of the things that I learned early on because I tried to find an autopsy report on her, and I was told an autopsy had never been done, which I thought was kind of strange because about a year, a little bit more than a year previous to that, Buford had shot and killed Louise Hathcock, one of Danny's relatives. And what got me about that was that, she owned a restaurant and a motel that was, in the movie, it was the Pine Ridge Club. But in reality, it was the Shamrock Motel and Restaurant. Now, it's kind of strange, I thought, that they would do an autopsy on Louise Hathcock, somebody who was basically a known criminal, and they wouldn't do one on a sheriff's wife that was killed in an ambush meant for Buford. That didn't make sense to me at all. So I ended up calling the state medical examiner that took care of everything over in the western part of Tennessee, Jerry Francisco, and I asked him about the protocols, and he told me that, the protocols back then, and still were as far as he knew, was that the county medical examiner and the district attorney had to concur on the need for a autopsy to be performed. And apparently, one or both of them didn't want an autopsy done on Pauline. And of course, those two individuals were pretty close to Buford, so who knows what took place there.
Yeah, and forgive my ignorance. You were a medical examiner investigator, Danny, back in the day, and you were right. I remember you doing that. Are you a medical examiner state, or are you a coroner state?
We are a medical examiner state, and the rules still apply the same way. It could be from the district attorney's office or the county medical examiner in which the death occurred. Either or could order an autopsy. Either one of them could do that, and that's pretty much still the same today. I remember teaching a class when I worked with the state. I was a state investigator, a death investigator for Tennessee, and I had to teach a class for the McNairy County Sheriff's Department. And jokingly, when I walked in, I said, my family may or may not have been on the right side of the law back in the day, And I said, well, I do have the autopsy report with me, and I did. I had it from, and anybody can get it, from Louise Hathcock, who Buford had shot at the bar. And the sheriff kind of chuckled. He said, well, I've got the crime scene photos down at the office. We can get together afterwards and we'll go. So that was pretty cool going through that. But you're right.
Color?
Examiner State, Tennessee is.
You know, the thing that Francisco told me, and I don't know if it's still the case, he said that even if the medical examiner wanted to have an autopsy done, the prosecutor could still overrule that. I don't know if that's the case now or not.
That's not true now.
Okay. But apparently there was some reason that here you've got Buford, Harry Peeler, who was then the medical examiner, and military Abernathy, prosecutor, why they wouldn't agree to have Pauline subject to an autopsy, I don't know.
If that don't bring up red flags, I don't know what does. Why do you not do an autopsy on something like that? I mean, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I got to mention something real quick, Mike. So I'm sorry to the audience when you were hearing a little bit. Hey, I got a 6-year-old grandson that he always needs grandpa's attention. So that's what was going on. Say hello. Okay.
I got a 7-year-old. I left next door. I came over to my neighbor's house. I left my 7-year-old grandson over there.
Well, he apologizes. I promise. He's just a 6-year-old kid.
Well, the only one that I've got here that can make noise is my wife, and I can't tell her age.
Okay. All right. So now this is in the news. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, they're testing a gun. There's a gun that's been discovered. Information about this. Do they have any suspects that still exist out there that they have been looking at that could potentially be involved in this case?
That's hard to answer because I don't know what they know, what they suspect. All I know is that, like I said in the last time I was here, that I've always used my Facebook page as a fishing hole for information. You know, quite some time ago, I decided that one way to learn something about this was to find people who, you know, were involved, knew somebody. And so I came up with the Facebook page, Bufford Pusser, The Other Story. And I started telling what I knew, and others started adding to it. It's things that they were aware of. A lot of them with firsthand information. And went on doing this, collecting information, trying to verify what I was given, so on. And then one day I have an individual contact me and said, you know, I've been following your page for 6 years, and I've never even commented. But he said, I finally decided that you're the real deal, that you want to figure this thing out. And he told me, he said, I think I may have the gun that was used in Pauline's death. And like I said last time, I thought, well, I've heard this story a dozen times before, and it's never panned out, but I always listen. And he told his story, and it checked a lot of boxes. So then I convinced him that we needed to contact the TBI, and you know, mistake or not, I went over there, took photographs of the gun, fired it a few times myself, got some of the shell casings, projectiles, and the TBI came out, picked the gun up, and took it with them for testing. And of course, then when they exhumed Pauline sometime later, man, I got hit by the media, everybody wanting to know what I knew, and it was kind of like, gee, where did they get the idea that I'm the one that came up with and then it dawned on me, my Facebook page. You know, probably the media had been following it as well. So
yeah, I mean, the thing that kind of comes to my mind, and I'm not trying to stir something up, but I would think that if that gun was not a match, you would have already heard it. You would have heard that within the week that it wasn't a match. And then just for me, that you haven't heard anything, really, I think there's possibilities that it could be. I mean, why wouldn't they tell you? If it is a match, I would think that they might want to keep it a little bit quiet to do some investigating. If it wasn't a match, no, it wasn't a match, but we're still following up on stuff.
I do know that they have continued to follow up on stuff.
Good.
It is certainly not over at this point. It's a cold case. They've had a lot of things going on in their department. I mean, I look at Tennessee, and I keep track of things that happen over there, just like I keep track of things that happen here in Arkansas. And I live 3 miles from the Missouri border, so I keep track of things up there as well. And I know that they have had a number of officer-involved shootings and all sorts of things over in Tennessee where, of course, that is where that they come into play, the TBI, because they generally investigate those. And for instance, even there in McNairy County, just right around Christmas time, they had a sheriff's deputy that was working part-time also at the Selmer Police Department that was shot and killed. And so
it's terrible.
Yeah, they've had the hurricane on the east side of the state, so they were involved in a lot of that. They've just been covered up. And cold cases are the last thing to get attention. So it's just taken them a while to get through. And people need to understand that cold cases are that way. They don't take priority necessarily.
Yeah, well, they're not fresh in the news, and people, if they're not getting called, if people aren't calling their family members and so forth, that case isn't going to move. I'm telling you, unless something is developed on it. Is there any kind of a reward that's being offered in reference to information in reference to this case?
I have no idea. I can't say that I've heard of any reward that is current now. Back in the day, at the time of her death, there was a $5,000 reward that Buford Ellington, the governor of the state of Tennessee, put up for information leading to anything about who had murdered Pauline. But other than that, I don't know of anything.
Growing up, and I want to say I wanted to get this in there. I don't know if I got time.
No, yeah, you do. Get it in there.
One thing that drawed me to Mike is, there's several Buford Pusser story sites out there, and people, when I grew up, I heard things from my family, I heard things from friends, and I've heard bad stories, good stories, and who do you really believe? I mean, you've seen the movie. That's a great movie. I mean, I loved it. It was a hero in our area. They actually made the movie in the town I lived in. Every time I watch it, I always say, I know where that's at. I've been there. I played in that graveyard when they buried Pauline. But when I saw Mike's post, I started reading, and it was based off of facts and not hearsay. And that's really what drew me to him. People can say what they want to, but when you can't argue those, you can't argue facts. And when you start looking at the things that Mike has brought up,
Yeah, I think Mike's
series that says things like what I've heard all my life, but it's just how can you prove it?
Yeah, we're at 54 minutes. I'm so sorry, people, because this goes. I mean, it feels like we didn't even talk much. I really, there's so much information that we've gotten tonight. Mike, I'm gonna send you the number of this officer that he's retired. But when I started telling him a lot of the stuff that you had told me, he's like, "That's exactly what I used to hear." And I heard that same stuff. And he's going on about this Oklahoma connection. And he says there's a really strong Oklahoma connection with the Dixie Mafia and stuff like that. So, I don't know. But nevertheless, he's another source of information. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. please tune in for future episodes. Next week, we're going to have JC from Fit First Responders, Coach JC, Fit First Responders. That's right. Get your light bulbs. And way to throw that in there. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate it. Like I said, I was really rushed to get here. I'm a little under the weather. I'm sorry. Mike, thanks a million. And Danny, thanks a million. You guys are the bomb. And, keep looking into this case. I think if you go to Mike's YouTube page, and I'm getting off here, I promise, Amanda, go to his YouTube page. He puts up episodes constantly. And he's got a motherload of episodes. And if you go to my YouTube page, Detective Jason White, I'm following his. So anyway, thanks again, everybody. Have a great night. I'm going to go drink some lemon something and hot something. But thank you all. Good night. Buy his book. Take us out, Amanda.